Cool. Awesome. All right, glad to hear it. So any questions?
I got a question
Sure.
about formatting for dialogue. Is there an easy way to format the text boxes so it's not all, they don't look all wonky?
How wonky in what way?
Like as in everything's pushed to the left. Is there a way to easily center it or anything like that?
Huh. Um, Let me see. So the text box you're saying?
Just text in general. Is there a way to format it like you can in C as far as like the format tags that they would use in like printf?
So there may be something built into dialogue, but you can also format your text before you hand it to dialogue. Um, and there are printf options in Bash, which will work. Let me see if I can do this without a safety net. Right. So oh, I didn't expect that. Oh, D. Right? So you can format a string in Bash using printf and put in a C-like formatting string, and you could capture all that, put that into a variable, and then use that variable inside quotation marks as your argument to a dialogue, so that the text you would be handing it would be centered already, and then if it displays it faithfully, it would come out looking centered. That would be my approach. But there may be options in dialogue itself for doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, other questions? So today's a short class. I have a meeting at 11:30. Um, so we won't get through as much as we did in the earlier section, but in section A, basically, the last 20 minutes or so of the class, we were playing with regular expressions. And we're going to do regular expressions a lot of next week, starting with Monday. So when class is done, I'd suggest going back and watching the last part of the A section video, which is uploading right now. Um, but everything that we covered there, and I would be covering in this class, we're going to go over again on Monday. So doesn't mean you should leave right now, but that was just kind of a first introduction. So take a look at the videos sometime before Monday, and then we'll dig into it deeper next week. So one question I had from people, and I've had this before, was passing values between scripts. So let's just refresh ourselves on this. So suppose you have some main bash script, right? Like your homework 7, for example, but whatever. And you want to, run a command in some other script. So, we'll just call do stuff. And we'll print a message in here. We're about to do stuff, and then we'll call that script, and then we'll come back. And so do stuff can be a script, that does whatever. right? So if I run my main script, it says, about to do stuff. It calls that script executes. It was set up to, calculate 2 times 12 and return, and then it came back to main. So nothing too exciting going on in there. So remember, we can pass values to scripts by simply listing them as arguments on the command line. So here I'm calling the do stuff script, and I'm giving it an argument of 123. And in here I can pick up that value as just $1. So if I say do stuff 123, x would be equal to 123, and this will print 2 times that value, right? So it prints 246. And one of the nice things when you're breaking your program up into pieces like this is you can check the individual pieces by just running them, right? And make sure that those are working correctly. So passing things to other scripts is not too hard. Running a script, just put the name of it. If you want to pass information to it, just list it after the name of the script. And we can have multiple things here. We pick them up as $1, $2, $3. And remember, these are separated by spaces. If I wanted to pass an argument that had spaces in it, what can I do? I can throw it inside quotation marks to say this is all one argument. All right, so the sometimes trickier part is getting a value back from a script. So let's say that, do stuff is a script that's supposed to multiply its argument by 2. Okay, so let me just do this. Result equals $x times 2. If you want to pass back a small value, typically something between 0 and 255, we can just say exit with that value. And that will go ahead and make that available to the caller, and the way we pick it up from the caller is by looking at $? And so we can print out the result here as $R, which I set R equal to $? And so, the result was 246. So if you want to pass one thing back, it's pretty straightforward. Just do it with $? By exiting with that value. But that only works for, a single thing coming back, and it's got to be an integer between 0 and 255. So if we want to pass something back more generally, we can echo it, right? So send it to standard out, and then in the code which calls that, we can capture standard out. How do we do that? Just execute your command inside back quotes. All right, so this says, go ahead and run this command, give it an argument 123. Anything that this command produces to standard out, set result equal to that. All right, so since I'm echoing 2 times the argument, that should come back to main and be the result. So that's still working. The nice thing about doing this is we can pass back multiple things this way. Okay, so how am I going to do this? Let's suppose that the goal of my do stuff is to do 2 things: multiply my number by 2 and also square my number. So I want to return both of those. So let me call this result 1, and let me call result 2 x times x. All right, so I'm going to output result 1 and result 2 from my do stuff function. Right, so my result was 246 and 15129. But when we pass values back from a function, typically what we want is we want to be able to do things with each of those values individually. Okay, this is where something like awk can make your life easier. So result is a variable that's equal to, some value, a space, and some other value. Well, awk is a nice way to take something in this format and split it into fields. and say, let's get the first field, let's get the second field. So what can I do here? I can say, split the result into two values. So I'm going to say, let's echo result, and I'm going to put it inside quotation marks because I want it to be one thing. Let's echo result, let's pipe that into awk, and let's tell awk to print the first field. And I'm going to put all of that in back quotes, which means go ahead and echo the result, those two things separated by a space. Feed that to the awk program, which I'm saying print out the first field of your input. That will print the first value. And since this is in back quotes, I'm saying take that stuff you would normally display on my keyboard, on my console, instead of displaying it, capture it, and set R1 equal to that. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the second field, and I'm going to save that in R2. And then I'm going to print out the values of R1 and R2. And so I've got my two return values in separate bash variables. Right, and all I had to do to pass those back in this case was just, pass them back as two numbers separated by a space. And you don't have to pass back just numbers like this. You can pass back anything that you want. So I could pass back, something like a string as my second return value. And I could break my input into 3 pieces and print out all 3 of those, right? And so now I've got back a value that, is a bunch of characters. And if you want to pass back things that might contain spaces, right? Well, that's not going to work very well, because it's going to think my third argument is, right? But what can I do? Well, instead of using spaces, I could separate this with something else, like, say, a pipe. And let me throw this all inside quotation marks so it doesn't get funny about my pipes, right? And let's check this, right? So this will return a single line of output, but that output contains 3 pieces of information. My value times 2, a string, and then my value squared. And so in here, when I want to break this up, I just say I want awk to use a pipe as a separator between fields, and I put the backslash so it doesn't try to pipe commands. And now I've got all 3 arguments coming back. Alright, there's nothing magic about this. There's nothing in particular that says you have to do this. The point here is there are a lot of different ways to pass information between scripts. Okay, I could take a script and I could generate output and throw it into a file, and then the thing that called that script could read that file. That's totally legal. I can return with an exit status. I could do something else, right? I could think of a lot of different ways to break this up. I can break this up using sed. I can turn this into an array and access the individual elements. There's all kinds of things you can do, and you really get to decide what you want to do, what makes the most sense for your particular task. So this is one way, right? I like awk. Awk is easy to get to do what you want to do, and to use awk just to break things into fields, really straightforward. But you have options, right? The slight downside to this is that if I print other things in this script, right, like if I put something up here, like echo hello Nick, that's going to break my code. Okay, because hello Nick is part of the output generated by this. So you got to do something with that. But that detail aside, right? This is pretty straightforward. And if I was going to do that, I would throw some marker in the beginning here, and then I would use something like sed to get rid of all the output before that marker, and then just grab, you know, the final thing that was output as my script value. All right. So I want you to hopefully get enough progress on homework 7 early that you can play around with some of this stuff. Play around with either embellishing the dialogues or adding more features or breaking it into pieces or, you know, experimenting. My rule I keep coming back to is you got to write code to get better at writing code. This is a really good practice problem to work around as an excuse for writing code. There's lots of things you can do with homework 7. There's lots of features you can add in and so on and so forth. It's a good opportunity to sort of explore and get more comfortable with Bash. And the better you are at doing, you know, things like this or thinking about things like this, the more you're going to find you can do in Bash. And it really becomes a pleasant environment to work in. And it lets you do things like customize your environment and so on. And you can do all kinds of things with this. So I have, you know, a little script running. It's a Bash script that's tracking election returns in Pennsylvania. And every time that the difference in ballots changes, it speaks an announcement to me and tells me that. And it's a Bash script. So it uses this command curl, which lets me go out and request a web page, and then I run grep to search for certain things in that list of information that comes back from curl, so the whole, you know, URL, and then sed, which lets me do pattern replacements, and this leaves me with you know, a file containing the number of votes for the 2 primary candidates, and I turn those into integers. I can find their difference, divide it by 1,000, and I see if that's different from the last time that this ran. So I set a variable change, and if there is a difference, right, then I'll go ahead and I'll speak a message, right, saying, you know, Biden is ahead or Biden is down, and I'll also output to standard out a message showing, you know, up or down by such and such K. And so I can just run this, right, and it just grabs that current information from the New York Times, shows me what the value is. And if the last value was different, right, then when I run this, it will, right, it'll speak the current difference to me. And speaking in Unix is easy, right? There's an espeak command, right, which will take whatever you specify and print that out. You know, if I want to know what directory I'm in, but I don't want to read it, I can just put it inside back quotes. Right, and there's my current directory. And the punchline here is, right, if you're writing Bash scripts, right, you have all of Unix available at your disposal. Anything that you can do from the command line, you can do in a Bash script. And there's so much you can do. I mean, you can speak commands, you can put up dialog boxes, you can download web pages, you can upload information to the web. You can use, you know, scopy to push things to another machine or to pull things from other machines. You can use SSH to run remote commands on other machines. And it's all just simple commands, and you put them inside a bash script, and you can capture the output of those commands using backquotes and tie it all together. And there's all this amazing stuff you can do, right? And all you need to know is this tiny little kernel of bash to do that, right? Ifs, whiles, conditional statements, backquotes, assignments, arithmetic. That's pretty much all you need, right? Plus a few other things like awk and sed and grep. And yeah, awk will be on the final, but we're going to go through awk a lot next week. And so yeah, we'll definitely talk about awk, and we'll see, you know, what I'm expecting you to know, which will be simple awk programs. But we'll do that next week. Is the fake grade data set you were using available on the Linux server? It could be. So SFTP is a nice file transfer protocol, so I'm just SFTPing over there, and I'm going to put grades.txt, and then I'm going to SSH there, and I'm going to move grades.txt to /temp. And then make that readable. So yeah, /temp /sample grade file. Feel free to play around with that. But we'll see how to use awk for a lot more than just pulling a field apart, a line apart into fields. Like I've said, it's a whole programming environment, and that's what we'll dig into next week. All right, let me touch on one other thing, which will be useful perhaps. So we can read from a file inside bash, right? We know we can read from standard in by just saying read in the name of a variable. We can also read from a file. If we ran a bash script and we said less than file name, then standard in would be replaced with that file name. But inside a script, if we want to read input from a given file, we can do the following. We can do a while loop while we say while read line do, and then we can put whatever we want in the body of our loop, and then when we're done we can say done less than, and we can put in the name of a file. So I'll just call it input file. And what's going to happen is this loop will open up this file and it will try to read one line from it. And if it succeeds, the contents of that line will go into this variable, and then we can execute the body of the loop, do whatever we want, and when we're done, it will try to read another line. It will keep doing this until trying to read the line indicates end of file, and then it kicks out of the while loop. So let's just try this. So we'll put out a statement before we get into the while loop. And we'll put out a statement after. And let's just say what's going on in here. And I'll output the value of this variable line. I'll put it inside delimiters. So if I try to run this, it's what did I call it? if I try to run this, it'll complain there's no file input file. So I'll just copy my do stuff script into input file. So if I run main, nope. If I run main, it will tell me it's about to execute the loop, and then it will show me each line of the file that it read. And then when it's done with that file, it says after while loop, and it shows me that. So you can open up a file and you can read in the contents line by line and do whatever you want with that. And each line that you read is just, you know, it's a bash variable with whatever happened to be on that line of the file. And if you want, you can also read the results of a command, and this is kind of a funny syntax, but I can do done and then 3 less than signs, and then a command in back quotes. And if I do that, it will execute that command, and each time through my loop, line will be set equal to the next line of output from that command. So now I've got the result of doing an ls on my current directory. So if we want to see what the contents of the bin directory is and do some processing on those file names, right? There's a loop that's going through, and it's each time through the loop, my variable line is equal to the next file name of a file in that directory. So I told you which file to read on the done statement. So if you want to read from a file, you say done less than file name. If you want to read from a command, it was 3 less than signs, and then your command in back quotes to, you know, capture standard out of that command. All right. So so that was a little rushed. Apologies for that. But so I have to go to a meeting at 11:30. I will send out emails later on today with groups if I already got a note from you asking to be put in a group and you haven't heard from me yet. Otherwise, have a good one. I will see you in 2:15 at 12:30 if you're in that class. Otherwise, have a good weekend, and I will see you next week. All right, thank you.